After what must certainly be one of the strangest Lents that any of us can ever remember, we have at last arrived at Holy Week. It's going to take quite a feat of the imagination for us to enter into Holy Week in isolation. The whole point, of course, is that we spend the week walking with Jesus through the events of the last few days of his life. But here we are, we found ourselves caught up in a crowd of people arriving at the Holy City, part of a royal entry procession. And we can smell the smell of the crowd and hear all the singing and the shouting and the calling out. We can hear the stamping of the feet on the road and all the noise of the animals as the people are funneled in towards that city gate of Jerusalem, where they're crowded in to find their way into the city. But this year, as every year, being part of this entry procession leaves us feeling a little uneasy. We know, as the crowd do not, that at the end of it all, the same people who are shouting Hosanna to the Son of David today will soon be shouting, crucify him. The joyful Hosanna will turn into a hate-filled crucify him. And so we're left asking, why? What difference does a few days make? Why does this happen just a few days later? And perhaps more importantly, we find ourselves asking, what about me? Will I be one of the people shouting, crucify him? You can see why people get caught up in the excitement of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. They're used to being governed by people from outside, rulers who don't really care about them, don't really know about them, who just want to take their money, to take what they have, to sort of milk the city, to milk the country for all it's worth. But here at last is a ruler who is different. He's one of them, he's from them, he understands, he's part of the whole thing. And so it might look ridiculous, it might look pathetic to a Roman high up on a big war horse, this silly little man on his donkey with his feet trailing along the ground and his eyes really at the same level as the people. But for the people, this is actually something deeply satisfying, deeply exciting and wonderful. Here is a king who understands, not a king who's come to take, but a king who's come to give everything, it seems to give his life. And so for them, this is something really powerful. And their instant reaction is to throw their clothes on the road in front of him and to wave palm branches as the donkey carrying Jesus passes by. And so there's this strange thing where we have the voices of the crowd, humanity, and the donkey, the animal kingdom, and the palm branches, the plant kingdom. It seems as if absolutely all creation is there shouting out, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David. And then there's this great climactic moment at the very end of the procession where Jesus arrives at the gate into the city of Jerusalem. And St. Matthew tells us the whole city is shaken. And this word that Matthew uses for shaken is really important. He's going to use the same word twice more in the next few days. Once to describe the time that Jesus dies on the cross, and the second time to describe the time that Jesus rises from the dead. The city is shaken to its foundations. But we know that this crowd is going to be fickle. They will quickly disperse. They will turn against him. Why does that happen? Well, the next day, on the Monday, Jesus goes to the temple and he turns over all the tables of the money changers and the people selling things in the temple and says, "You have turned my Father's house into a robber's den." And so all those people who are coming there to do what they have done year after year after year suddenly find they can't. What they had become used to has been rejected by Jesus. And so you can begin to imagine the first shadows of doubt emerging in their minds about who this man might be. And the next day, he comes into the city and passing a fig tree, a barren fig tree, he compares this fig tree, which is producing nothing, he compares this fig tree to the sterile religiosity of the leaders of the religion in Jerusalem. And he goes to the temple, and then once in the temple, 6 times in quick succession, he refers to the scribes and the Pharisees as hypocrites and false leaders. You can see why now the tide is beginning to turn against him. It almost seems as if he's deliberately setting out to alienate people. But that's not the case. He's come to Jerusalem to do something very specific. And this is what's happening all through Holy Week, and it begins today on Palm Sunday. Jesus comes to Jerusalem to say to people, you think you know what God is like, you need to look again. What you think God is like is too small, too restricted, too human, too earthly. You need to look again. You need to understand that God is actually something much bigger, much more exciting, much more beautiful, much more beautiful than you could ever begin to dream about. And that's what he's doing, and that's why he challenges the people, and that's why he challenges the religious leaders. Look again. In our world, there are lots of people who think they know what God is like and reject him. The message for them of Holy Week is, you need to look again, because actually it's something much more exciting at work here than you could ever have thought. And ourselves, we also find ourselves sometimes disappointed in God. He doesn't seem to do what we want him to do. He doesn't seem to be what we want him to be. And for us too, then, the message of this week is, you need to look again. You need to look again and find that there is something really, really extraordinary at work, something you cannot begin to imagine. And the great thing about this is that we discover that the reality of God, rather than what we have constructed, fulfills all of our deepest longings. It puts before us a world where the primary values are not power and wealth and beauty and strength, but are humility, gentleness, kindness, courage, self-sacrifice. And for us in this present time, the really exciting thing is that we discover that all those things we are going to learn that God is really like in the course of Holy Week, all those things are exactly the things we've learnt to admire in the world around us in this present crisis, this present pandemic. God is presenting to us in Holy Week exactly what we need at this very moment. He's asking all of us, you think you know what God is like, you need to look again, because in reality he is bigger and better and brighter and more beautiful than you could ever imagine. The curtain raiser for the Palm Sunday story, what happens immediately before it in the Gospel of St. Matthew, is that Jesus is passing through Jericho on his way to Jerusalem, and here he meets two blind men. And when he asks them what they want, they say to him, Lord, please open our eyes. And that's a really significant thing, because that really is kind of the motto for Holy Week. You could almost write that above the top of the service book for everything that we're doing in Holy Week. Lord, please open our eyes. So for us then, the message of Holy Week is, you think you know what God is like. Actually, he's something bigger and better and more beautiful. Look more deeply, and you will fall in love once again with the person of Jesus Christ. Look again. Lord, let our eyes be opened. Have a wonderful Holy Week.